Welcome to Congaree National Park, South Carolina. Well, I went on the National Park website, and from what I can tell, they might be expecting some flooding this week. I'm not sure how that will impact what I'm doing, but it seems like a lot of roads and trails get closed pretty often due to flooding in the swamp and everything. It's interesting though, I didn't see any rain in the forecast. It's been raining the past few days, but I don't see why it would flood in the next week when the rain already happened and there's no rain in the forecast. It might take a while for all the water from higher elevation to get to the swampland or something, but that's just about the only thing I can think of. So I'm headed to the visitor center now. I'm gonna ask them their recommendations on hikes and boating, fishing. So if I have it right, I think this is a beech tree, and it's got to be, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet in diameter. From what it looks like, some of these trees are at least 100 years old, and they're just huge. I actually don't know if that's a beech tree. I don't think it is. I think beech tree is like a smooth gray bark. Honestly, I think Congaree is a national park because it's the largest remaining tract of old-growth bottomland hardwood forest in the US. So I think that's why it's protected so heavily, and it's a national park. Not just in the US, in North America. Well, this is the first park that I've came to that I really didn't know anything about it until I got here. I didn't do too much research on it. But first impressions is just, I mean, it's nature. Everywhere you look, there's birds, there's woodpeckers, there's squirrels, all sorts of trees. Pretty crazy. All the brown muck is a mixture of leaves and clay and all sorts of sediment. And they're saying it's at least 8 feet deep in most places around the swamp area. And it's basically what filters all the pollutants out of the ground and the groundwater, and filters the area around all the trees and the plants and everything. But 8 feet of sediment and clay is crazy. But like, look at that. Just smells like rich dirt. From the information I see, it's called Doravin muck. So just a few miles from here, where the Congaree River meets up with the watery River, there was a Maroon Settlement, which was a place where escaped slaves would kind of congregate. And it was easier for them to get their freedom by traversing through swamps like this. Obviously, because it's hard to find people and it's hard to walk through it all. This looks like an area that gets flooded more often than others. Definitely some weird looking vegetation. So it sounds like they're calling these knees. It's like a knee of a tree. So these little streams, the little creeks within the swamp, are called guts and sloughs. Basically, they flood before everything else. They're the lowest part. They basically disperse all the water when the area floods. When the flooding happens, silt and sediment are deposited on the banks of those guts and sloughs. It basically replenishes the area with nutrients and all that stuff. But it's definitely not clear water. It's very muddy water. Doesn't mean it's not clean necessarily, it's just muddy. So that fallen tree right there is a Loblolly Pine. They think it might have lived for up to 2 centuries before it was knocked down in '89 during the Hurricane Hugo. And they cut the rest of it to clear the trail, and they inspected it and they looked at the rings, and they could see signs of forest fires and droughts and abundant rainfall and floods and all sorts of things. But it was 200 years old. Starting to see some Spanish moss on the trees near the water over there. I'm approaching Weston Lake, and holy crap, that's the biggest tree I've seen so far. Goodness gracious. Freaking massive. So in 1919, the 18th Amendment was passed. Banned alcohol consumption, I think it was. Just outright consumption and creation and consumption of alcohol. And the Congaree swamp area was a big haven for moonshiners and bootleggers to hide out and make their alcohol and sell it in town, basically. I see some bubbles. There's there's at least fish in there. There's some fish jumping. Wonder if there's alligators in this area like in the summer. I bet there is. So something pretty crazy about this lake. It used to be part of the Congaree River. A couple thousand years ago it was part of the river. And then the river started to bend south. And it kind of left this oxbow shaped lake right here. Now it's Weston Lake. And I think there's a few of these types of lakes that used to be part of the river that got left behind. If water finds an easier path to flow, it's going to flow in that direction, and it leaves other parts behind. So since then it's been filling with clay and debris. There's all sorts of animals and turtles and snapping turtles and things like that. I wonder how many different species of plants and trees there are here. So I was wrong initially, but I eventually corrected myself. These big trees are the Loblolly Pines. They're the tallest type of tree in South Carolina, easily. The pine trees don't usually grow in such wet conditions, but I think this species of pine is very tolerable to the water. That tree back there is 150 feet tall. And at one point it was the state champion tree. How insane is that? So I don't know, hopefully some of that information was helpful or interesting or whatever. Well, one thing I'll say about this park that's awesome is that all the trails are flat. They could be covered in water and swamped over sometimes, but they're still always going to be pretty darn flat. Okay, that's definitely a stream gauge right here. This has to be one of the USGS water level, water quality monitoring stations, definitely. Yep, there's the symbol right there. So here's lake number 2. This is Wise Lake. And from the map, you can kind of tell where the guts and sloughs flow. And it connects with the other lake that I was just at, Weston Lake. So I would bet that this was part of the Congaree River at one point. All right, one last little trail. This is Bates Ferry Landing. And this is like a 2.2 mile round trip hike to the Congaree River. So I want to at least see the river before the sun sets. It's like 5 o'clock right now. And it's a mile away to the river, so probably just gonna do a little light jog there and back to end the day, and then head back into Columbia and cook some food. It's pretty cool. You can see where the ferry used to be. You can tell the ferry started here and went across the river, and there's a similar outcrop in the forest on the other side. You probably can't see on the video, but it's like right in the bend of this river. It's probably a pretty narrow section compared to some of the rest. And you can just picture a wire running across the river with, you know, maybe a 10-foot by 10-foot or even bigger, almost like a standing dock that could ferry back and forth. No freaking way! I just saw a freaking boar! Ah, you can definitely hear it at least a little bit. I was like, there's no way that's a squirrel. And it looked like a pig. No way. That's so weird, because I thought when I did my hike near the visitor center, I heard at one point I stopped and I heard this oinking thing, and it was like a deep guttural, like I don't even know. It wasn't a bird, it wasn't an owl. It had to have been some sort of mammal. I thought it was like a river otter or something. But it had to have been a boar or like a pig. I don't know what type of species it is, but it had to have been whatever that was. And that was maybe a little bit smaller than just the pig that you normally think of. All black, completely dark, very easy to see through the woods. It wasn't tan or anything, completely black. I thought it was a black bear. I thought it was a black bear cub at first. But it was alone, and it wasn't. There's no way. I got a pretty good sight of it. But yeah, I mean, it immediately ran away, and it sounded like it took a while for it to get its momentum and actually start moving. Big fat thing. This is why I try and be quiet on hikes as much as possible and look around and not stomp, not play music while I'm hiking, not yelling, and I'm not with anyone to talk to, so it makes it easy. But sometimes if you're just a little bit observant, you can see things that other people won't, or see things that you're not expecting at all. And that's honestly why I'm doing this.